And so the Samā then is this death ceremony. It's this symbolic representation of ego death. And so the white garment that they wear under with the skirt, that represents the spirit itself, our true nature. The black garment that goes above it represents the body, our physical nature. And they come in with the garment on, but then when they start the ceremony, they take it off. So this is the death. It also represents the funeral shroud that we'll all be buried in, the white garment. And the black represents the earth that we'll be buried in. So this is deep symbolism of death and rebirth. Even the hat, the sikke, the beautiful hat that our brother Mithad is wearing now, what does it look like? We walked through the graveyard today. It's a tombstone. This is I am dying before I'm dying. Mutu qabla an tamutu, as the Prophet ﷺ said, die before you die. Let your illusory self die before you have to die. It's much easier to die before than there. And Rumi said, everyone has to cross this path, either willingly or unwillingly. Everyone has to die, either willingly or unwillingly. So it's better to do it now while you still have breath than to wait until you have no choice. No. And our brother Mithad will get into it more, so I won't say too much, but you notice that the sheikh, the master, if you notice when they were whirling, there were the masters with the green turbans, and they kept on their black cloak because they have fully awakened and they have come back. In other words, they're spirits but embodied. The purpose is not to shed the body. The purpose is to be embodied spirits, awake in the dream. The purpose is not to leave the dream, because before we came here, we were before the dream. The Prophet ﷺ said, people are sleeping and when they die, they wake up. So die before you die is wake up before you wake up. Right? What do they call people who realize they're dreaming within a dream? Lucid dreamers. The Sufis are the lucid dreamers. They're realizing it's a dream. They're here, but they're realizing that they're actually in the place that they fell asleep in. In other words, we were in the garden, we were in the divine presence, in the spiritual realm before we entered in this realm. But where are our spirits? Still there. Just like you were last night when you fell asleep in your bed and you entered into a dream world and you experienced whatever you experienced, you never left your bed. Likewise, we have never left the divine presence. But we're asleep, so we think we're in where this is all that's happening, and buying and selling and traveling and our worries and our hopes in the dream. It has a reality, but it has an unreality. So this is the message of the Sufis, is to wake up in the dream. And so we also mentioned, all the gravestones, what did they say? Huwa baqi. Huwa baqi. He remains. And this comes from the verse, as we mentioned, كُلُّ مَنْ عَلَيْهَا فَانٍ وَيَبْقَ وَجْهُ رَبِّكَ ذُو الْجَلَالِ وَالْإِكْرَامِ. Everything is perishing, and what remains is the wajh, the divine countenance, the face of God, possessing of majesty and bounty. ذُو الْجَلَالِ وَالْإِكْرَامِ. And so from that we have fan is perishing or annihilated or is unreal. And we have baqa, fana and baqa, these two high stations on the Sufi path. There's ego death, which is a high station, but even higher than that, where the culmination of that is to return to self-awareness while being aware of the divine. In other words, there's unity, non-duality, but even higher than that is witnessing unity in multiplicity. Being in this world, but not losing sight of the divine reality. We'll speak about that more later. So this is really what the Samā is all about. This is really what the Samā is all about. And so the master who has attained that state is leading the seekers, the murids, the dervishes, towards that state. Towards that state. And this music and this dance and this invocation, this chanting, and Mithat will correct me, they don't call it dance, it's just more than dance. But we understand this sacred movement is all to bring us into a state of letting go of ourself and realizing what always is. And so if you notice, a few things to notice in the Samā about the body, the movement, is that the right hand is always up and the left hand is down, if you noticed. The right hand is facing the heaven, the left hand is facing the earth. And this is to be a conscious conduit or channel of the divine mercy into the created order. I think tomorrow or the next day we'll talk about the ney, the reed flute. It's being empty so that the divine breath, nafas ar-Rahman, can blow through you. So we can truly have the divine mercy flow in us. So it's like a prayer that you become this channel of Rahman, from ar-Rahman. And if you notice the feet, if you pay attention, it is the left foot that stays still and the right foot that turns around. This symbolically, the left foot represents the Sharia. And the right foot is the Haqiqa, the spiritual reality, the tariqah and Haqiqa, such that we're rooted in the sacred law, the sacred precepts, the sacred practice. But we understand it's a path. Sharia literally means a road to water. It's to take it, to drink. So the spiritual reality orbits around the practice. And each invocation is the name Allah. Every time you turn, if you watch the lips of the dervishes, and some of them are saying it out loud, some of them in their heart, Allah, 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 Allah. Invoking the divine name. And this is the preferred dhikr of Maulana Rumi and his order. Different orders have different invocations that they emphasize. So one of the Qadiriyya, they often will emphasize in their daily word, Hasbunallah wa ni'mal wakeel. Right? We rely on God, He's the best of reliances. The Mevlevis, and we'll let Mithat go deeper in this, but it's Allah, Allah, just the divine name. Just the divine name. Allah, Allah is what is often emphasized. So another thing that we'll notice in the ceremony, and Mithat will point it out in the Samahani, the place where they whirl, is that when they come to begin the Samā, they bow to the Shaykh, and the Shaykh bows to them and almost like plants a kiss on them. In a certain sense, like the kiss of death of the ego. And then you notice they step over an imaginary line in the middle of the space, and then they turn around. So there's a stepping over and a turn around and another bowing. So this line, this invisible line, represents life and death, body and spirit, Jalal and Jamal, night and day, all polarities. They're crossing over. And then they're bowing again. And then the slow unfurling, like a rose, right, of this Samā. And if you notice, the Shaykh has one foot on each side of the line. Again, the true masters, the true awakened ones, they have a foot in this world, a foot in the next. A foot in the body, a foot in the spirit. In a certain sense, that line has become less significant from them. They're in both worlds at once. Again, they've come back to the physical world from the spiritual world, but they've never left the spiritual world. They're in the spiritual world while being in this embodied world. And that's the highest ideal. That's the highest ideal. So, these are just some preliminary remarks that we wanted to mention about the Samā, because it's far different to just watch it and see it and say, that's beautiful. But when you actually understand what's happening and the meaning behind everything, then we start to actually remove the veils and start to see what's happening. Just like when you take the path, right? If you don't see everything as meaningful, or if you see this world as just material, but then you start to see with the light of Iman, you start to see everything is meaningful, everything has reality. Likewise with the Samā.